by more than 11,000 hours.
Paul Bryant, he's the assistant scoutmaster, and we got Nikki Brewer, she's the assistant. And Jackson Brewer is our senior patrol leader. And if you would come forward and just introduce everybody. And just speak right there at the podium, please.
Hello, I'm Jackson, the senior patrol leader. With me I have Xavier Follett, Trey Meredith, my brother Riley Brewer, Aiden Hepworth, and Caleb Bennett.
Thank you for coming and leading us in the pledge. And tell us a little bit about your troop and what y'all do.
We're going on a camp out this weekend to do Dutch oven cooking, and we like to do merit badges, which is earning different skills, I guess. Right now we're doing a public speaking merit badge, just basically how to carry on a conversation.
Well, that's giving you that credit now. Okay. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and have the prayer, and then we'll let you do the pledge. Our most gracious and Heavenly Father, thank you so much for your Son, Jesus Christ, Father God. And during this time of Thanksgiving, Father God, we just want to give thanks to all of our veterans, Father, the people that give us this opportunity to live free. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen.
Attention. Salute. Pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Jackson, would you like to say anything else, or anybody else with the Boy Scouts would like to say anything? And I know we got some aspiring Eagle Scouts, and this is where it starts. This is a good point in your life, and the things that you can become. And you get a lot of skills from what you're doing. You'll see it one of these days. Thank you.
Where's Troop 131 based out of?
Memorial Church. Any other questions to Boy Scouts?
Just make a comment.
Go ahead, Mr. Grease.
When you're my age, you'll look back at this and you'll know that this has been one of the greatest parts of your life. You'll look back at it very favorably. It'll have a big influence on what you become from now on.
We certainly thank you for your participation. Thank you. Next is approval of agenda.
Move to approve.
Second. I'd like to make a motion to move item 8 to after appearance of citizens, please.
Okay.
Second.
Have a motion second. Have any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to move item 7, the ASAP litigation tax resolution, after item 8
Okay.
in the new agenda.
Second.
Have a motion second. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. I have a motion to accept the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Next, we have the appearance of citizens. If anyone wants to come forward and address this board for anything that's not on the agenda.
Like when I walk up, you're thinking, oh, God, here he is again. But Scott Burton, of course, Mayor of Clinton. One thing I wanted to bring you all up to date, I think Mayor Frank's going to talk a little bit about the 2 locations for the senior center, which I think both locations are strong choices. One update as far as the Armory. I was able to talk to Steve Queener, who's over the Fair Association, and talking about the space during the time that the month of July when the fair is there. And we had talked about the ones that went to the community or the Armory last week. As you all know, if you've ever been to the fair, you know the back area where the kitchen would be and also the back offices, which there's 3 offices on the right, two large, I won't say offices, but rooms on the left. I would guess probably those offices are probably 3 times the size of the senior center as it is today. But what we were talking about, because initially we were talking about just the seniors would have to leave those 3 or 4 weeks during the month of July. And what we had talked about was to keep that the seniors can still use the building during that month of July where it's cut off, where the kitchen is and where those offices are. For that time in July, with the exception of the 5 days, the weekdays when the fair's going on. And if you think about it, I think that Wednesday's always been senior day. So it's really 4 days that they wouldn't have access to the back room, but technically it's the 5 days. So that really cuts their time being out of the senior center for really just 5 days out of the year. And we would, and I'm assuming this, we would be more than happy to let them use the great room at the community center for those 5 days, if like we always have been. So that's just one of the hurdles that we had talked about as far as the seniors going to the Armory. And I just wanted to bring that to a public meeting so everybody would be on the same page with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? Good? Thank you.
Thank
Commissioner
you.
Anderson? Hold on a second, Mayor.
Has council, is city council pretty on board with like a certain amount of money they're willing to cost share with us?
Yes,
still?
we
Is that
we
still-
approved last meeting, we would chip in up to $100,000.
Okay.
With the county also bringing in that same amount. And I know City Manager Roger Houck and Mayor Frank, as they've talked about, you know, what it would be, what it would take. And I don't know if we have to do everything that we need to, but I think we need to prioritize what we need to do up front and look at maybe fundraising and other things down the road. But I think $100,000 apiece would certainly, you know, get us going in the right direction.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other one? Come for appearance of citizens. Seeing none, we'll move on. A Veterans Clinic in Rocky Top. This is something I requested, and we have our veterans, guy that's over veterans, Leon Jaquette. If you mind, would you come forward?
Evening.
Good evening. And Leon, what my proposal is we had Covenant Medical move out, which is Lake City Family Physicians and all that. And so we've got an empty building. We lost our high school, we lost our grocery store. Now we don't have any medical providers. First time since the existence of the city. So, and then in thinking about, you know, Veterans Day coming up, and there's so many veterans that's from that area. It just was one of those ideas that came to me. Would it be possible if we could reach out as a legislative body to the powers that be at Covenant and to our state representative, Senator Leon, anybody that you can think of, to try to put a veterans clinic in that facility?
I don't know about a veterans clinic or a VA clinic, because they got one in La Follette now that they've just opened 3 years ago. Then we got the big one over in Knoxville. Now, through the new VA Mission Act, which is coming in effect in June of this year, but it's still in the infancy stages. It's still growing. And they have the community care program that the VA is coming out with, where veterans are going to be able to use civilian doctors and facilities instead of having to use VA doctors. It's a building process. They're still trying to figure out manning it, tracking it, managing it, and tracking veterans and which doctors are going to be enrolled into the program and be able to work with our local veterans to save travel time. We're hoping, or I'm hoping next week when we're in our training over in Nashville, that we're going to get a little more information on the VA Mission Act. Because not only is community care going to be part of the process, but veterans using the urgent care facilities is part of the process, which is going to free up VA doctors. Because right now, VA doctors get 15 minutes with you, and they've got to move on to the next patients. So that is hopefully going to change through this VA Mission Act of 2019, but we just don't have a lot of information right now. It's something that once I can find out more, I'll get information out to y'all and let you know what's going on and what their process or mindset is and how to go about getting the doctors enrolled into the program. Because that's going to be about the only thing. It's not really going to be a VA clinic because the VA is probably not going to put another clinic this close together. But it very well could be part of the community care program that veterans be able to use the doctors up there for their care and save traveling to Knoxville or Mountain Home or La Follette, as the case may be.
That would actually even work out better because that puts a medical care provider back in that community with a way to make ends meet by serving the VA as well.
I mean, I don't know if the VA would actually step on and help bring somebody back in there, but they would open it up where the veterans could use a doctor who is in there.
Well, there's some ongoing discussion with the people at Covenant now about trying to put something back in there, but I'd probably like to use this conversation in that negotiation, but I would think that we wait till Leon comes back before we form any type of resolution to see how to word it. What do y'all think?
I'm with you.
Commissioner Wendell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's a great idea. Saw the building myself last week driving through there. Hated to see it empty. One of the folks that was on the selection committee for Mr. Jaquette works at Covenant. And we can reach out to the commander, former commander, and see if she could maybe help us out and develop something. I think it's much needed. And yeah, we can wait and just let me know if you need that contact, either one of you, and I'll give it to you, but I'm in support of it.
And I've got other businesses who deal with medical equipment for our veterans that's trying to get set up with the VA where they could help provide equipment where the stuff doesn't come from Mountain Home all the time, where they could get it locally. And
Great
we're
idea.
trying to find contacts at the VA clinic or at the VA hospital of who they can coordinate all that with. And it's a process that's, VA doesn't do anything quickly.
I think you're going to come up with some really good ideas, Leon.
One more thing, Mr. Chairman. At our Tennessee County Commissioners Fall Association meeting, of course, Commissioner Meade is the chairman of the Veterans Committee for that organization. There was some discussion about the Courtney Rogers, the new Veterans Commissioner for the state, and it was encouraged by the board to invite Ms. Rogers to our areas to meet with the veterans officer, and this might be a good opportunity to have her come in and see what the proposal is, the idea, and have Leon take her, and maybe that might be a good next step.
And I met with Commissioner Rogers at a meeting over in Knoxville probably about 2 months ago with several other local service officers. And she has actually brought our annual training back in place. And that's where we're going next week for 2 days of annual training over in the Nashville area again, which stopped for the last 3 years. So we've got that back. So it's going to add to our experience again and help us with our accreditations and give us the opportunity to better network throughout the state and through with the state level people. And Commissioner Rogers is really, I say she's more down to earth than Commissioner Grinder was.
Commissioner Meade?
That's a gracious way of saying it.
I'll be nice to officers.
It appears to me that if under the VA Mission Act, okay, and the community care, if we can get this facility certified as a provider under that program, that the additional patients, by adding the vets to the clientele, could make maybe make this thing viable.
Yeah.
but in order to get that coordination and get it covered under community care, that's gonna take some coordination with the VA and with our state reps and stuff.
Right.
And
Yeah,
so
because you
I
figure-
think, I think we're headed the right direction by saying, hey, look, here is a possibility. And if we could get this facility approved for use by vets under the community care program, then this could become a viable clinic. There'd be enough clientele on a regular basis to keep it running. Because I think the problem that they had is there just wasn't enough traffic.
Exactly.
And as a result, it didn't make any difference how many programs supported it. If people don't show up, you don't get paid.
And for the number of veterans in Rocky Top, Briceville, North Clinton area, even on the south end of Caryville, southern Campbell County, I mean, they're liable to utilize that facility if it becomes a viable option for them. I mean, I go all the way to La Follette. I use Dr. Lucas up there because she's a pretty good doctor. I've had her 3 years now.
That's great. Anything else?
If we're through with that discussion, I just want to throw a compliment his way. Yeah. Everywhere I go, Leon, I run into veterans that tell me how good you're doing and how you're helping them.
Don't believe everything you hear.
Well, I do. I've been wearing my hat a lot, and when you wear your hat, you run into more veterans. And as you know, every veteran's got a story,
Oh, yeah?
and they want to tell you about it. And they always tell me what a good job you're doing.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you.
I enjoy it.
And Leon, I want to express my sincere gratitude to you and the members of this committee for taking this project on and helping. I really appreciate it.
Anything for veterans.
Thank you. All right. Next, Mayor's veto of ASAP litigation tax resolution number 19-10-772.
I guess it's on here twice. There's a section under the law director's report, ASAP amended litigation. Probably got an email sent out by me about a week ago or last week. There's no need to override the mayor's veto on this. We've amended the resolution, and I hope the mayor's satisfied with it. But we've ran it through CTAS. We've also had some other people look at it. We've spoken with all the clerks. Rex has been tremendously helpful, so has Hal Cousins, in getting these numbers. And I think we're at a place that we can amend this resolution and not have to take action on the mayor's veto. Of course, you can go back and veto if that's your so desire, but I still feel better with adjusting this resolution. You have the new resolution before you. And what we've done is also sent some backup information, legal backup information to you that shows an AG opinion. It also shows the statutes and how confusing these things are. There's 3 different statutes that set litigation taxes, and we're operating off that 601 statute. And then there's 3 different authorities within 601. We were operating off subsection B. And if you look at that, the wording of that section starts out, notwithstanding any other law to the contrary. So despite any other law to the contrary, which makes it really difficult. What are the preclusion statutes that we know about? Do they actually apply to this 601 statute?
Excuse me a second, Jay. Does everybody have that resolution? Because I don't have it.
It's in your, yeah, it's in your
Oh, on the
packet.
computer, okay.
And it's,
Not a
I've sent
hard
it to
copy.
you individually, and it's in
Yeah, we
your
got that.
agenda packet. So, but anyway, this resolution takes care of that. Couple of things, it would apply to all courts. And if you looked on that AG opinion, it says we can't specifically carve out cases or courts. So this would apply to all courts, and that's not only the 7th Judicial, but also the 2 General Sessions courts that we have both in Clinton and Oak Ridge. And also to all cases that are not precluded by general law, and that's a broad statement. So we have to look at the ones that we know that are precluded. Well, we have to err on the side of caution. So let's say the delinquent taxes, we couldn't apply it there. Then probation and parole has a specific statute that says you can't add it to those type cases. And there may be more, but we wrote in here that this broad statement that says we're not precluded by state law. And we've been in contact with the AOC, the Administrative Office of the Courts, and they've been very beneficial of helping us understand exactly where are these preclusion statutes. But this statute, even the one with this resolution, even if a statute was passed in the future, it would still hold. And it would still be a good legal resolution. But anyway, it brings it to $10 on criminal cases and $5 on civil cases. Well, Rex and Hal got together the numbers on it, and it looks like if you take into consideration that you're only going to, 30% of all criminal cases get dismissed. So you've got to take that out. Then there's only 30% recovery rate on criminal cases. There's almost 100 cases, 100%, it's in the upper 90s on civil cases, but on criminal cases, you lose about 30% or non-payees on that. So when we do the math, we're looking at between 26 and 34,000 is what this would generate, absent any beer board fines. But I think Tim would agree with me. The beer board usually doesn't issue that many fines, maybe 3 or 4 a year at the most. Would you say that's accurate, Tim?
I think we've only had 2 in the last 3 years.
Yeah, so it's not that much money. You're not looking at a lot of money, but we know that in the general area on this litigation tax embodied in the new resolution, it's going to bring in $26,000 to $34,000 for ASAP each year. Any questions on the wording or any questions on the legality or anything that I can answer on this?
Commissioner Meade?
It sounds like what we need is I'll just make a motion to let the mayor's veto stand and replace and then pass this new resolution. It's not really amended, it's a new resolution.
It's actually got a new number on it.
New number and all, 1911-783, that we move it to full commission for approval.
Have a motion, we'll have a second.
I'll second.
Second for discussion.
Yeah, do we need to even talk about the veto part of it?
If we take no action, we're letting it stand.
Yeah. Okay.
No, there's no official action to be taken on the veto if that's your so desire.
I see, okay.
We're just replacing it with this, I hate even to use the term amended, we're replacing it with a new
Yeah.
resolution. Mayor, is this your understanding of it? We're replacing it with a new resolution?
Okay.
You okay?
Yeah, the only thing, and I just wanted to be clear, the only reason I did it is I put in the letter there, we had that section that said no litigation tax, but I did send an email out, and I know Jay said he's been working with the AOC on that. It would be good maybe in the future, or I don't know if we want to amend this, but maybe as we look at these other taxes that we're dealing with, if we create some type of system just to communicate, so we're not precluded by state law, it would be good when we pass the things to notify the clerks, and maybe that's something Jay can do. So the left hand knows what the right hand's doing. Sometimes in government, things get lost in that process, so.
Rex, okay?
Anybody else? I guess that's the one problem that I had with is that how the right hand didn't know what the left hand was doing, because once we went from operations committee to full commission, then all of a sudden we said, no, we're not going to do that. And we just held off, and then we had the resolution. You know, I'm a big supporter of our elected officials that work as committees and going forward with this, because, you know, it got a little convoluted there.
What, I'm sorry, I'm not following you. What did we decide?
Well, when we first decided, when it was $20, I think that's what it was. Yeah, and then all of a sudden, you know,
That was the
no.
month before
Yeah,
last, right.
yeah. Yeah, and then all of a sudden, come up with all this new stuff, but it really didn't go through a committee to even be discussed.
Came up through operations.
Not the amendment, not the second resolution, because it went straight from that to full commission, if I'm not mistaken.
No, you had a copy of that before operations last month.
But we didn't take it up as far as all the detail in it about, where we could use the, all these other things that I think in the mayor's veto. The reason why she vetoed it is because it wasn't legal in her eyes. Is that correct?
Well, I think there was some confusion, and she pointed that out.
Yeah.
It's hard to make a determination when the first word of the statute says notwithstanding any other law to the contrary. That's difficult, but
Yeah.
this takes that out. And even like I said, if we had a statute that was passed in the future, this would still help us there, because it's got into the language is, and all courts were not precluded by state law.
So anything we've used before, we're perfectly legal. We didn't collect anything outside the boundaries or anything like that?
The way it was worded before was certainly in jeopardy by that, if you read the Attorney General opinion, but again, that's not a law.
Yeah.
But that AG opinion seemed to say it had to be on all cases. And remember, we taken out probation and parole cases in there, and it had to be applied in all courts. That's a new AG opinion. That's been put down since our original ASAP resolution, if you recall. And we had in there that it didn't apply to juvenile court. So
Right.
just to be on the safe side, this one errs on the side of caution with taking care of those two issues. All cases, all courts is the general rule from the AG opinion.
Okay. ASAP is very important to this
You've got a
county.
copy of that AG opinion.
Yes, I
so
do.
if you want to look at it.
Anything else? So the motion is to approve 19-11-783
And recommend it full commission.
and recommend full commission. We have a motion and a second. Have any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want to say that?
Next, Mayor.
I'm going to turn this portion over, the first item on my agenda, to Russ Nelson with ESG for presentation. If you'll recall, back in September, you recommended to full commission authorization to allow them to do detailed engineering and project development activities. So they're here with a report and to perhaps offer you a couple of options coming from that report. So.
And my fine associate is in the back, Jared Carter. He's a professional engineer, and he's done most of the hard work along with a variety of other engineers. So we appreciate the opportunity to really, we're basically done with our engineering. We're down to final recommendations. And as the mayor shared, we've kind of got a base recommendation that we feel is, we'll call it the most obvious scopes of work, because it'll, as we've talked about, it will fully pay for itself from really mainly energy dollars alone. So we're delighted with what we're able to share with you tonight. And then some additional work that would make a tremendous amount of sense to do at the same time that goes a little beyond what energy savings can pay for. So our hope tonight is to quickly go through this agenda, and I'm going to try to not dwell on anything. If you have questions, please stop me at any time. And I know mainly I think we'd like to get to what are the recommendations and what are the savings and what's the whole thing look like in terms of a neutral proposition. So real quickly, just a little bit of background. I think most of you are aware of our work at the schools. We're just finishing up the last of phase 2, And so we'll have done about $21 million of work for the schools. Again, all of that in the same vein of paying for that work from dollars that were already really within the school district budget. We're ahead of what we've guaranteed them by a substantial amount on savings, so it's really been a tremendous success. I'm probably most proud just what we've done to really change the environment in a lot of their buildings. They're just plain better buildings for teachers to teach and students to learn, and they're safer and healthier, and all that's been on the back of current expenditures. So a real success story. So we've really started back in March. We were given just from the mayor the authorization to do some preliminary looking around. And in August, as she shared, we've been given the approval to go ahead and do real engineering by the commission. And ultimately, the findings tonight are going to hopefully be pretty clear. We've tried not to add things to this project that don't make any sense. So it really needed to be a logical item, or it needed to have some real payback to it. What we feel like at this point, we're very clear on what the challenges that we were really asked to address involved. And for the most part, it's that you've got a lot of things in your buildings that have a number of years on them beyond, in a lot of cases where you'd really like to keep that equipment and different systems. This building's biggest thing is, as we've listened to a lot of people and looked at a lot of data, the inconsistency and comfort. Across the street, the biggest thing probably is the appearance of the building and just some very old window systems. In terms of security technology, the jail's been part of all this analysis, that complex. There's really some very dated security technology, and as I'll share with you, that's really impacting some of their ability to conduct operations. And then the last thing, really looking at your utility expenses, is they have definitely gone up, and so our goal has been to find a way to reduce those as much as we can and accomplish the other needs that we're looking at. So within that entire discussion is what is it that you own asset-wise that needs maintenance, and what plan do you have to take care of that group of equipment? So we'll also look at covering that. But the goal has always been to bring you back recommendations that provide a true long-term solution to these things. It's easy at times to just throw you the inexpensive option. What we try to do is assume, unless you've told us, your buildings are going to be here for the long haul, and you're not intending to get rid of something. We'll go into DARC, because that's one building I think we've been given a lot of different thoughts on as to how much that plays in long-term for the county. So we've been very careful with what we're recommending there. But again, our overriding lens has been, how can we do the very best we can to use energy and some clear operational cost reductions to pay for this. So that's the big picture. I'll just say again to thank Jared and a bunch of other people. I won't go through any of this, but we have done a really good job. And I'm biased, but I've been doing this a long time. But our team has done a good job of really earning the knowledge. Sometimes you can just say things without earning the knowledge. We've worked hard to earn the knowledge about your buildings. And I would be remiss not to thank Roger and his staff. He's put up with a lot of, we need access again. Could you open this door? And so anyway, that's always an imposition. So with that, I'm going to dive into recommendations. We'll start with this building. And you do, in general, just have a lot of older equipment in this building. You did add some new air handlers. And ultimately, what we're going to recommend to you is that you maximize every dollar you spent upgrading the air handling equipment. But the chiller is past useful life. We don't believe it's very efficient. You've got a single boiler that's okay efficiency-wise, but we don't like single boilers. We would prefer to have you on a dual boiler approach, and the new boiler installed being condensing boiler, much more efficient. That will be your primary boiler. The existing boiler will be a backup, but you will have a backup. Because if you lose that boiler in real cold weather, and that's the only time you lose a boiler is when it's real cold weather. That's somehow how that works. Yeah, you've got the smaller picture on the bottom left. That's an example of one of your pumps. But these are original, so you've gotten great service out of them. But that's a lot of time to be in service. So we're going to do a substantial amount of cleanup to that mechanical room. The green chiller will go away. The tower on the roof will go away. Those will be replaced with an air-cooled chiller that, to us today, makes much more sense for this type of building. Extremely efficient, but we'll clear out that room substantially. There'll be room then to work on the air handler that's in there and the boilers in there and the pumps. We'll get proper light in there, but you know, just as an example I'll go on to the comfort here, but we've really tried to understand why this building is as expensive as it is. And ultimately, you do have heating and cooling working against each other. So we're going to add a lot more capability to this building. Right now, you've only got 29 thermostats. Is that the correct number? So we're going to go up to 123 thermostats. And it's really not just a thermostat. It's an ability to manage the heating or cooling going into a space. And then we're also going to take that information back to a central control system that can make sense of how much heating, how much cooling, and airflow is really going to each of these different zones. So it's going to give us a dramatically different ability to help you manage this building. But the diffusers throughout the building, and you've got a couple of pictures there. I mean, by and large, these are pretty much older looking diffusers because they are older diffusers. We're going to replace all of those. There are 198 of them. You'll have new, bright, new looking diffusers. They'll do, in many rooms, better job of distributing air. And behind, for instance, this is one room. We're going to have a separate control capability then for how much air is being distributed. So a significantly different way to manage this building. Again, we're going to leverage what you've spent in the past on the air handling upgrades, but new cooling system, basically new heating system, new pumping system, and really a new distribution control capability out in the spaces. So we looked extensively at all the insulation needs, not just of this building, but of all of them. A lot of things did not make the cut. So we always look at a lot of engineering options, and ultimately only some of the best things make the cut. So the only thing here we really are ultimately recommending is to insulate up under the loading dock. Those offices above that don't have a fair shot a lot of times in colder weather to be comfortable. The control system, we believe it's just, as much as it's still got some life in it, it's just never probably been designed adequately to manage this building properly. So we're going to upgrade it substantially. The heating, fighting, cooling, we expect that to really go away. This may be a surprise to you, but the chiller is on an idle right now. And you would not think you would need any chiller running today. But that's what happens to control systems. Over time, they don't get better and better. They tend to get worse and worse. So, yes.
I'm probably going to jump in before I need to, but you said 123 thermostats? Is that what you said?
Right.
I know I'm not a scientist, but I've read this before, but women work better at like 77 degrees, and men work better at 71 degrees. What's your answer to something like that?
Well,
because that's the fight. I mean, the women always want it warmer, men always want it cooler, and I don't know. Does this 123 help that?
Yes, absolutely. Because right now, part of the reason we believe this building is as expensive as it is, you've got a lot of space heaters throughout. And in fairness to people in different spaces that are not able to be managed consistently, people do need to be comfortable. You're paying way more for employee expenses than you are to run this building. I mean, without question, staff is your big expense. So you want people comfortable and able to do their job in a good environment. But we go by ASHRAE standards for temperature. So, and that's the Heating Cooling Society. They've set really reasonable standards, but what we're going to provide you with this building and the others is the ability to set a range for people to manage. They will have 2 degrees up or down generally, and you can change that. You can give somebody really no change. There are a lot of options you have. The thermostat does a certain thing and it says it's doing a certain thing, and what you allow it behind the scenes is another thing. So I don't want to make that sound bad. It's really a useful management tool. But honestly, people should not be changing the temperature that far. It really ought to be at a given point. 74 is a good cooling set point, and 72 or 70 is a decent winter set point. But I'll tell you this, many people do not dress appropriately. So, and that's not a criticism, it's just an observation. But you're never going to have everybody happy. But what we've really talked through with Roger and the mayor is that when this system all gets in, it really probably needs to go through 4 seasons, and people need to do their very best to get used to things a little bit, let them fine tune. But the system's trending capabilities are substantial. So if somebody says it's not comfortable in my office and it's been hanging straight within a ½ degree right at set point, you have some useful information then to discuss that with them. But there's a lot to what you've shared, but a lot of that, though, people do need to dress appropriately. So I better go on. This system does give you the ability to adapt to incoming weather. I mean, the controls are definitely an upgrade from what you've got now. We will also be tying the electric meters in at all these buildings, so you'll be able to see real time what your power use is and all the trend data. So if you know this building ought to turn off at night down to a given power usage, and if you're not seeing that, it gives you the clear direction then to figure out what's going on, why that's not the case. The building will be all upgraded as far as LED technology. The hallways will get new fixtures. We're trying to be careful with your money, even if energy's paying for it, but a lot of fixtures are perfectly good fixtures. They're going to be converted internally to LED technology. You'll have a tube with LEDs that doesn't need a ballast, so they'll have a 50,000 hour life expectancy. That's a long time based on the burn hours in this building. That's 25 years or more. The exterior lights will go to LED. And was that a question? And in certain large areas, we will add occupancy sensors, but really not too many. The ceilings, we're going to replace a variety of ceilings, and where we're modifying diffusers, we're going to have to fix the ceilings. But the main concentration really are on the hallways. A lot of the tiles really are fine as the determination. So this is going to give the general public a significant sense of improvement. So again, we're trying to be careful with spending monies that don't necessarily bring you a big return on renovation value or some true correction improvement to energy. We are adding a proper access door. This is down at the front east corner, I'm going to call it. And you've got an access door, handicap access door for the first door, but you don't the second door. So that's really not an acceptable scenario, so we'll solve that. This building has a camera system in it, and it is analog technology. It's served you, I would say, reasonably well. And the goal with replacing it is to get you a much more capable system. Really, the resolution you've got at different situations isn't really providing that much help to you. The ability of the cameras to do some analytics and alert you to things, you don't have any of those kind of capabilities today. So when we call it an integrated camera system, it will tie to your card access that's going in. So if somebody, the best example I think is if somebody has their card lost or stolen and they have that card turned off, and somebody tries to use that, as quick as that happens, the camera system's going to focus in on that person that used that card, and your deputies will get an alert. So that's a neat function. That's just one example. There are a lot of other functions of ways this system uses some advanced software. It's all pretty helpful stuff. We believe it really does aid in productivity. It aids in security. So you will have, this is about as good a camera system for this application as we know of. So you will also, by the way, have a shared video archive system between the Jolly building and this building. So it's just an excellent way to find something if you need to. That's the recommendation here. Across the street, the heating cooling system there, a fair percent of it's been upgraded, the water source heat pumps. We're going to complete the last of it that are units that are past useful life. We're going to convert the way heat exchange water is flowed to those to a variable flow control. We're going to replace the pumps there. They're really not able to go to a variable the way they are. A lot of what we found when we really dug into that building is the filter access. And this lower left picture is a filter, but what you find when you get in there is the tray lets the filter slide one way or the other, and there are things on the unit blocking it. So you have to fold the filter basically in half to get it in there. And so what we're going to do is modify sheet metal wise each unit in the best way possible so that you've got ready filter access. It really is a challenge where a lot of them are at, and to have to fold the filter in half, that really hurts the integrity of the filter. It's just not what you want to do. We're also going to add, there are a variety of areas in that building that really have some specific comfort challenges. So we're going to add the ability to do some varying of the air volume to different areas. So that should really take that system to a good place for the long haul. The control system, again, just doesn't have the horsepower we would like it to have, so we'll upgrade that. It'll really incorporate the capabilities needed for the variable flow control. We are adding valves to all of the units, so if a unit's not needing to condition the space, we're not going to push water through it and have the resistance in that unit, so it lets us back the pumps down on the hydronic loop. The lighting will go to LED, and probably again, the hallways are going to get new fixtures. The exteriors, almost all new fixtures. That'll be very noticeable. I think we'll really upgrade the quality of light. The other areas, the fixtures are in good shape. We'll upgrade them to LED technology. Fair amount of ceiling work there. And again, you know, if you've thought about the hallways, you've got the lights tucked up against the wall. A lot of that light never gets out of there. Your ceiling's beautifully lit up in there, but that's usually not that helpful. So we're gonna basically redo that ceiling. We're gonna put center of the hallway mounted lights. We'll use much less wattage, and it'll look like a modern hallway. It'll feel different. Same camera system, so we're basically just gonna have effectively one large camera system between these two buildings. So the ability to maximize supervision. There are just a lot of options that are maybe available today, but if not, they will with this new system, and you'll have some definite ways to improve security. And again, these are really an upgrade of what you've got. We're not, at this point, adding new camera locations. I just want to make sure. So we're on the same camera locations. we're just going to have a lot better resolution. So when there is an incident, it's night and day what they'll be able to see. The exterior of the building, the minimum we believe really needs to get done is to really get that building cleaned. There's a lot of concrete surfaces, and then the actual building itself, it's basically an aggregate material. It's not per se a stucco. Parts of it are stucco or a EIFS material, but it's a composite. So all that'll be cleaned. All the concrete surfaces will be cleaned. All the joints, we've got a variety of places in that building that are not watertight. If they're not watertight, they're not airtight, so the building is leaky. Those will be resealed. And then there's some areas that are broken. Right over by Domino's Pizza is the big obvious one, but you've just got a big chunk of the column missing. So that'll be fixed. And then you'll get a primer coat on the entire building and 2 coats of final color. So the building will look dramatically different. The windows are 40 years old, and so we've done our best to really like the windows there, and they're not a true window. Is the example here? Somewhere.
Is that it here?
Oh, okay. I'll just let you look at this and pass it around if you like. But this is a modern window system, and the biggest thing with these is thermally breaking. I don't know if I let you all see, but if you don't provide some type of insulating material here that doesn't really conduct heat and cold, then whatever temperature it is outside, you're generally going to have the same temperature of the frame inside. And so you tend to create a drafty in the winter area. You just got a whole cold wall. Glass in general isn't a great idea insulation-wise, so there's only so much you can do with that, but this modern system is going to have a low E film on it. Does a good job of rejecting heat when it doesn't need it in the summertime, lets it in the winter. But this is, I'll just let you take a personal look at it if you'd like, and I'll continue on here. So the option that we're providing is a base scope of work. It's heavy duty stuff and it's expensive, so I'll just warn you. But there is a big difference between the technology that's here now and what this technology represents. There's really a lot going on with that. The building transmits sound pretty well right now. On a modern window, it doesn't. So this is what we're not thrilled about recommending to you, but we're going to share it as the base.
This is the old one?
That's the new one.
This is the new one.
What we're not thrilled about recommending to you, thank you, is to basically recaulk all these windows. You've got somewhere around 13,000 square feet of windows. That's a lot. I know there's no perspective for you on that, but that's a lot of window. And so we would recaulk the windows from the exterior. It's not a perfect deal. It comes with no guarantee. The frames where we can improve on how they're holding against the glass, we'll try to improve on that, but it's just an imperfect deal on a 40-year-old system. Anything outside takes a beating with heating and cooling and that cycle repeating day after day. Where the spandrel glass, you've got an actual window and then you've got a fake window. In the lower section there where it's the different color, that's a fake window. And we would apply an exterior film to standardize that look. And then at the end of that whole process, we'd wash the windows. But that's still a significant investment to do that scope of work. But it would be an improvement. You do have infiltration in the windows. You've got failed seals. So you've got some fog glass. I don't know what percent. Do you have any guess on what percent, Roger? So everybody's seen a failed window in their house or wherever, but it does take away a lot from the appearance. So that's the renovation scope. This is the option to go with new windows. So that's a close-up of the frames, just from down below, and you can see that frame's got problems. The spandrel glass, there are just a variety of things here that are a challenge. The doors, they are a lot of age on them. The inside of that, if we did a comprehensive replacement, that wall section below would be replaced. The example of the shades there, obviously the white ones are what you've got now. What we would put in would be the roller shades, which standardize the appearance. So let me just go to this. I'll have you part with this. This is what it looks like now, and this is what we believe it can look like. So that's current, and that's future. And we believe we've kind of moved you forward to basically what people could confuse with a brand-new building. The other thing here that I'll point out is the courthouse here has a darker brick, and then it's got a stone. The color that we would suggest taking that building to would be that same stone color. So we feel like there'd be some legitimate tie then between the two buildings and how they look. And it would, we believe, provide a lot of benefit to downtown. But again, if you're going to own that building long-term, it's just time to, we could renovate the windows, as I shared, but it's probably, we're not thrilled about the recommendation. It's, if you're not going to, yeah, thank you, I just wanted to show you that. All right. The other option beyond this option, reduce the amount of window, that fake window area, we'd build a true wall system. And this is, again, current, and that's if we add basically back.
Hold that current picture up there. The way it looks now, like that. Thank you, sir.
Oh, that's funny. I'm changing slides and he's doing his best to, mine aren't actually changing anything. All right. So, yeah, the other option is to redo it as it is. And our ultimately, all of our different costs involved, it's a wash. And the reason for that, you would think it's more expensive to build out a whole nother wall system and whatnot, but glass is expensive. And so I can get that out of your way. But, you know, when we, the only reason I wanted to pass this around, it's heavy duty work. So we would engineer basically a support structure for this, the way these hang. The upper windows are a different engineering design, but I'll go on here. I just wanted to share with you, you can just click through these. That's Briceville, well, go on back. So it really can transform a building, and that actually made that building a lot safer as well, based on the sidewalk. But the next one is just a high school we've done, and people in that community just couldn't believe what the difference was with it. So again, windows are kind of expensive. We just finished not too long ago the Bradley County Courthouse. So it got a variety of things, but a lot of the look you're seeing different there is cleaning the surface. The windows made a big difference inside. So thank you, Jared, that's good. So any questions on the windows?
How come it's so heavy?
It's just the amount of metal in it. And glass is the other side of it. Glass is heavy.
Glass is heavy too.
Yeah. But I honestly was surprised, but this has to have structural element to it based on the way it's built. So it's a window wall system is what they call it.
I want to ask you a question about the pressure washing. Do you recommend that be done every so often?
It's hard to get around it. It depends what your standard is. You know, the longer you go, the more you get used to how it looks. But I would tell you, yes, at some interval, it'd be well to decide that that's a program thing. The maintenance software that we're going to talk about too, and inventorying your assets, that's one of the things, if you can program some of those things in, whether it's painting hallways or cleaning windows or whatever, I mean, otherwise time goes by, and it gets tough to do that. But I think in fairness, pressure washing on a given schedule, it depends what, again, your standard is, but I think so. I know my gutters at home always want to turn darker.
One other question. You're gonna be replacing like these diffusers and other things. Do those things that you're taking out, do they have any salvageable value?
Very little. Usually it costs more to deal with it than to get paid by the pound for whatever it is. So unfortunately, usually it's a bad proposition. So I'd love to tell you otherwise, but.
I would think if you're going to LED lighting in all these fixtures, you'd have an awful lot of ballast.
Yep.
And as long as they're not PCB ballast or something, I would think that they would have a salvage value. I also just want to point out that a number of years ago, I worked in a bunch of projects as an engineer that involved replacing windows and stuff in buildings. And we keep talking about how expensive these new windows are. I'll tell you what's really expensive is leaving them there. Leaving the old windows in place. You're paying for the new windows anyhow. You're already paying for new windows. You just don't have them yet because of utility bills. Because these insulated high E, not only do they make your buildings quieter, that's one of the first things that people notice when you put these new window systems in is, oh my God, I can't believe how quiet it is in here now. But the other thing is utility bills. Now, just in my own home, as an example, I cut my utility bills to a third of what they were before I started by doing some insulating and putting in new window systems that are high E, argon-filled glass, and insulated frames.
And it's hard for us, I might have shared this previously, but it's hard for us to calculate the impact of windows because it's not a simple calculation and it's hard to model that. Every building performs differently and whatnot. But the given is that the Jolly building is a leaky building. We know it not just for air, but for water. So I appreciate the comment. It's very true.
But also just infrared heat. In the summertime, these windows are really good about keeping the heat out. And in the wintertime, they're really good at keeping the heat in. And they just reflect heat.
And that's a big deal, especially if you don't have the perfect HVAC system, which rarely any space does. But yeah. All right. Well, jail complex. One of the biggest things that we'll accomplish at the jail and recommend is to upgrade the plumbing. And plumbing in a correctional complex is complicated stuff because you just can't leave things out for people to mess with. So the biggest thing here is we'll be replacing 142 of the flush valves that are actually behind a wall. And that alone isn't the big deal. It's really that the valves will have some smarts to them. So there's a flush lockout capability that you can set depending on what you'd like. Our recommendation is more than 2 flushes in 5 minutes. Depends on whether a toilet's used by lots of people or not, but you set a logical thing, but something beyond that indicates vandalism or just somebody wasting water, just bored and flushing the toilet. So you can see all the other devices that are recommended here to be upgraded. But the smart valves are also able, which at this point we're not recommending, but at some point you may want to do that. Those can all connect to a master supervision system, and it adds more control capability. But you really see where water's being used, and again, if it doesn't make any sense, you've got some way to control it. So there's a substantial water savings. We're also replacing some worn-out hot water storage tanks, and then there's a sewage bypass upgrade that really is there for a couple reasons. Code compliance is one. But effectively, when you've got people flushing things down the toilet that they shouldn't, towel sheets, you name it, then potentially you've clogged up your flow out to sanitary sewer. And so what ends up happening there, I don't know that they've really been fined, but it's $10,000 a day if that overflows into the river. So what we're recommending is an engineered bypass. So it lets you around the grinder. Still, there's a screen in the plan that we have, but it's meant to be a temporary scenario. So if the main system has a problem, you're able to bypass it, still not put anything into the sanitary sewer that you shouldn't. So all the lights will be upgraded. I'm just going to go quickly here, if that's okay. We're upgrading the controls. You've got mainly rooftop units that heat and cool that building. We're going to add some really excellent capability for those. Because that's a 24/7 facility, we really want to be able to vary those units. Right now, they're really just purely on-off, and basically they're just on. We're going to be able to vary the fan speed, which allows better humidity control. It allows better comfort control. It also gives a lot of feedback maintenance-wise. The dishwasher's worn out, and the jail's actually spending a fair amount of money keeping it going, but new ones are just substantially more efficient. They clean with ridiculously smaller amount of water. They're using higher pressures, and the ice machine will also be replaced. In the laundry, we're going to allow you to wash without hot water based on an ozone system, and people say it actually does a better job of cleaning and sanitizing, and turns out a better product. But so it saves on substantially natural gas and on the detergents and chemicals. And then the other thing with the jail would be the security camera system. So this is original. So it's 25-year-old technology in the main building. And for anything electronic, as you can imagine, a lot of us don't have a 25-year-old TV in our home. And so 25-year-old camera technology is not a great deal. The little article that I only am giving you a snippet of there, a couple of key quotes, though, is that basically what's been good enough in the correctional world, and ESG does a tremendous amount of correctional business, what's good enough on surveillance is not good enough now. You really have higher expectations. The technology has taken tremendous leaps forward, and that's a big deal for productivity, for liability, just for safety of all the people involved there. But without question, if you've been involved in a correctional facility at all, it's a complicated place. And managing everything that's going on, I would not want to do it. But so effectively, you've got grossly inadequate resolution. The example that you might have heard is that in looking at an attack on a correctional officer from across the room, it wasn't possible to even tell the race of the inmate, let alone who it was. So if that gives you a picture of how bad the resolution is, if you can't tell the race of somebody, let alone obviously having a chance to determine which prisoner it was that attacked a correctional officer. And the other side of some of this is, as we understand it just from being served in the correctional world, is there's liability when you can't justify that your correctional officer's done the right thing. So when you don't have the video evidence to say officer so-and-so did exactly what they should have, it puts you in a deficit. So so this is what's proposed. There's 124 cameras that'll be replaced. They'll go from analog to digital, and depending on the need for resolution, we're not just doing overkill. The problem with overkill anywhere with camera systems is that the video storage then gets out of hand. So just because you could put a 12-inch line in doesn't mean you want that much water flowing into the try to look at it later bucket. So we're trying to match resolution with the needs. The network controllers that manage all these cameras are replaced. The video storage system goes to a true network system, which is different than a hard drive, much more capable. The monitors are all replaced, and it's a substantial number of monitors. They'll be much better quality. All the cabling's going to be replaced. It'll go to Cat6 cabling, but that just means it's got the bandwidth and the speed and whatnot to process this data. New battery backup will go on so that even in a power failure, you're not going to lose anything and you can continue to function. And then the software's got some really amazing analytic capabilities. Every correctional facility uses things differently, but this is just a real quick list for you. But effectively, you're kind of multiplying the capabilities of your supervision. And when things go on that shouldn't, the system's able to give supervisors an alarm. So it's all not just, interesting stuff. Depending on how it's utilized, is really valuable capabilities. So, any questions on the jail complex? It's really some valuable upgrades for the jail, and we're actually seeing quite a bit of savings come out of all that as well. DARC, our real question here is what renovations really make sense, and effectively the entire building is a candidate for all those things listed on the left of this slide. Our real question is what's truly being utilized, and what quality would you really justify to conduct renovations there? And ultimately, the space that's in blue with the red boxes, those are spaces that are not going to be utilized. The daycare group is moving out of those spaces. So that leaves you with United Way using part of that, the front of the building. So our two criteria really is, for our recommendations, is invest in the space that's really going to be utilized. And then otherwise enhancements really need to be of a critical nature, or they need to significantly reduce energy costs. So that was the game plan. The roof, you need a watertight roof. That roof, when we really got into it, was installed in 2003. It was a thicker than normal membrane, EPDM membrane material. So we believe that really roof renovations versus a replacement at this point are the best recommendation we can make. It's really very cost effective, but effectively we're gonna work on the drains, the seams, and the flashings. Those are your normal points where you're gonna have a problem, so we'll double down on those. HVAC wise, the area in yellow has the likelihood for future use, whether it is record storage or some other use that makes sense for the county. But we want to get as much of the system as we can off the steam boiler and a decent sized chiller. So we'll be recommending putting in high efficiency gas furnace with a DX cooling. So those can work individually. If the space is being used, it can run. If not, that space can be off. And the balance of the building can largely be off or to a definite setback level. In the space there, this is the back of the building. We would do new ceilings, new lights, paint the walls, and update the floors. So you're going to have quality space. If it's record storage, that's great. If it's some other function, you'll have good options there. There's 7 windows associated with that space. The preference has been just to go ahead and close those windows up. So they'll be insulated, metal on the outside and framed in, drywall painted on the inside. And, so security-wise, that's probably a great idea. Efficiency-wise, you can't beat an insulated deal versus a window. The building really does need a control system. I mean, the energy use just doesn't match with how many people actually use the building. So we'll will really manage that. For the most part, you've got pneumatic air-based controls. Those will all be updated. The lights will be updated. In that renovated space, you'll have new fixtures. So again, that space will look good. It's really not a huge investment, but you'll have 7 decent offices or areas. And I guess dating back, that used to be a school. Is that correct? So effectively, you'll have 7 classrooms worth of space that'll be decent, good quality. The boiler room's got some uninsulated steam lines. Those will be insulated. You've got some of the exterior doors that really need to be weather stripped. That'll get done. So that's a recommendation on DARC. It's kind of make the best of your situation and provide some useful space that's quality for a variety of options. So last building, health department, really not a lot to tell you there. We'll take the lights to LED. We'll take the controls to a true manageable control system that you can set things back, holidays and whatnot. Countywide, so this basically says all the buildings, anywhere it makes sense, we're going to do these things. The first thing really is to understand and tag every asset you've got and set up a preventive maintenance system for you. This is really a pretty big deal, but we would add not a barcode today. Today it's going to be a QR code. But all of your maintainable assets are going to get a QR code. We're going to define preventive maintenance that's required on those things. This will include a fleet module. So all the vehicles associated with the county, instead of some type of paper-based system, you'll really have a proper database system to drive what history has gone on with the equipment, when it needs something. To your question on pressure washing, the only way to know what your budgets are going to be long-term is to program things in. This will tell you all the assets you own when we're done, and this does involve a fair amount of field work for us. But you'll know the age of your assets, the likely replacement expense. This is the way to own and manage buildings. So you haven't had this tool before, and there's a lot of training that we'll provide along with this, and then there's unlimited technical support. So this is a cloud-based service. That's about the only way you can buy a lot of software today is a cloud-based service. This happens to be, we believe, the best software by far. So and our goal with this is that your current ratio of preventive maintenance to planned repairs, planned maintenance is kind of flipped from where you'd like it. And so generally, when you can plan things, it's half or a third the cost of an unplanned. So this is going to allow you to move that way. Every piece of air moving equipment, and I believe there's 134 of them, are going to get ionization technology. It does a phenomenal job of knocking down pollutants. It allows less fresh air to be introduced per code. And on hot and cold days, that's a big deal energy-wise. But it does a great deal also to reduce odors. So for the prison, the jail complex, we believe that's going to be helpful. And in cold and flu season, it just plain knocks down junk that is going to potentially keep people from work. So the last item is a long-range facilities planning study. And the question we've been trying to understand, I guess, as we've done our study is what space is being used, by who, and what future needs are there. So the studies plan to be conducted by a high-quality architectural firm. This is what they're good at doing, but they'll look at all the current space being utilized by the county in each building and department. They'll work very hard to understand what are your future space needs potentially looking like, and bring all that information together to try to understand, are there some future facility needs that you've got? Are there some things that would make sense? Sometimes when you can assemble all the trees into a logical group, you get to see a pattern. So our hope is to bring you back something within this study that really helps you understand, here's what the long term looks like. and whether there's some likely things to consolidate. You know, the one given is you've got sheriff's resources spread around. So the question is not just the facility needs, but are there some costs associated with some of these things that would actually be savings if you could do things? So we're kind of encouraged. This will be really useful information for you in a lot of different ways. So
Commissioner Anderson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You'd mentioned earlier on the courthouse portion about the door entrance and then also the camera system, that you weren't going to add any other cameras. When you were doing the analysis of this building, did you consider, have you had a chance to consider the witness rooms that we're planning on adding, and if any type of cameras are going to be added there? And then also we aren't planning on doing this yet, but if we ever change the courthouse down to like a one secured entrance, would those additions be something that could be done without necessarily having to tear out and start over what you've added in?
yeah, hopefully I answer your question properly, but camera-wise, you've got a lot of flexibility to modify that as you need to. I think witness room-wise, I think that's, when you do that, you can add additional devices, and I think that's, you're accommodated with the network infrastructure and the storage, but, so I think you've got flexibility.
Okay. Yeah, and I guess part of that was that, and then also, you know, just the thought of not having to necessarily drill through new drywall or something like that after the fact, but, yeah.
Yeah, some of that I'd be dangerous to tell you, yeah, it's not gonna create some patching need, but, you know, in a single entrance, I think part of our question is just the big picture. If you have better cameras, I think that's gonna enhance your security, but, our hope is that we're not necessarily gonna answer some of these kind of things for you. We're gonna give you a lot more information to work from to think about that. So the facility study should be helpful to that effect as well. So did that answer?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not totally sure when, you know, when that project will get started or when this project will get started, but hopefully that they can get coordinated.
And I'll cover that.
Okay.
Yeah, the facility study, we believe, can really be turned over to you complete. And that's a fair amount of meetings on different county people's parts to participate in that. But probably by the middle of March, we believe you'll have that study in hand and can you know, start to think about the information from it. So.
Okay.
So utility savings wise, when we first met with you, we were at about $220,000 a year that we felt we could reduce. And that's gone up to about $261,000 a year. And then if we do what we're calling the complete project, which would include the Jolly Building windows, the renovation scope helps those windows, but the complete new windows is really kind of the game changer. But so that adds another $5,000 of savings reduction. So that gets us to about 33% reduction. So that's on a base utility expense for the county of about $800,000. So that's really probably better than we might have thought. That's a big percentage. So we see that regularly on projects, but it's still a pretty good lick to get that much usage out. Our guarantee always leaves a little bit. We will have a guarantee to you of these savings. It'll be annual for the term of the financing that you end up deciding on for a project. But we leave a little responsibility on you to run the buildings right. So our team of management folks and engineers that Jared reports to, our conclusion is we're comfortable at 93% of that being on the hook for that on an annual basis. So, and what that looks like in terms of where you're at today, this is just kind of a fun chart, but it's a big reduction. And I'll point out a couple of things on this. The DARC building has some significant legitimate use in the court side, but, in the Dickens building, but you've got a lot of use of that building or energy use there that we think we can really make go away. It's just not, it's kind of the car idling in the driveway all night. You just aren't using a lot of that building. So we think that that's probably got some additional room. And then the courthouse, anytime we're looking at cutting a building more or less in half, we start to get, I guess, a lot of questions of ourselves if that's realistic. This building does not have a lot of wall insulation, so it's got some unique thermal characteristics. We don't think it's that unique, though. I mean, part of the given of a three-story building is the first two floors don't have a lot of ceiling load on them in terms of heat loss, heat gain. Basically nothing. It's a neutral. So for us ultimately to come out with this building still costing more than running a jail, it doesn't make sense to us. So we're probably being overly conservative. But we'd rather, just like we've done for the school system, we'd rather come back to you and find that the results are greatly exceeding what has been discussed and guaranteed. But we don't think anyone cooks here, takes showers here, does laundry here. And you've got, what, 400 or so, 400? 5? How many inmates roughly?
It's around 400, so the max is 520 right now.
Okay. I mean, that's a lot of humans 24/7 to cook for, do laundry for, take showers. So we think we're being conservative on utility savings, but even if this is what it is, this is a great reduction for you. This is good stewardship, and we're going to make it more comfortable. We took a look at what your spending is, and this is a challenging thing on maintenance repairs, because a given year can be a good year or a bad year. And the older equipment gets, you have more bad years than good years, if that makes sense. So we looked at the categories. Some of these we have a lot more data on. But replacing HVAC units, I mean, the Jolly building alone in a given year, you will have spent that alone. So our total that we believe is what we're calling the total opportunity or likely number is $60,000 of expenses related to those different things you see there. And we like to factor that number down. So the factor we decided on here is 60% of that. And we believe that should be a very realistic number to see reduced from your expenses. So basically, all your HVAC is going to be in good shape for quite a number of years. We're really addressing things that you're just not going to necessarily need to see expenses on for quite a while. Your lights should be good for, depending on the burn hours in the area, though, 25 years, 30 years. And we are making a lot of improvements at the jail. What we haven't gotten a real good read on is exactly what the jail spends on some of these things. Some people account in different ways, and it's easier to peer into that data. I would just say in general, we probably don't have the best tracking of exactly what's been spent, but we believe this is a pretty good take. And then as far as what percent of this whole base project or the expanded project or complete project, as we're calling it, and just to clarify, the complete project adds the window replacement versus a renovation scope at Jolly, and it adds all the camera work. So, and the only reason to separate out the camera work is that it just doesn't necessarily have the energy payback to it that some of these other things have. It certainly doesn't determine what we believe the priority of it is. It's very important work. So as far as capital cost savings, for us, what it needs to effectively say is that that's dollars, those are dollars that are going to need to be spent in a reasonable time frame here. You're not going to avoid spending, and what we're saying is roughly half the cost of the capital expense of this work. It's probably work you don't have a lot of choice. It's going you're going to be spending the money one way or another in the coming years. So what we do is simply look at that total expense and divide it by, in this case, a 20-year term, which is what we believe that you would probably do for the term of bonds. So not a perfect way to look at things. It's just it's a way to affix some value. And what you'll see is we really don't expect you to necessarily need to use much of that value. So these are the basic project financials. The first is the base project. So this is going to leave out the replacement of Jolly Building windows, and it's going to leave out the camera systems. So our total funding available across 20 years is a little over $10.2 million. And energy only is about $6.8 million. So our base project cost is $5.45 million. And so the highlighted yellow number there is the percent energy pays at first cost. So that's a really solid project. What's left is interest expense. So when you add the operational savings impacts, you're up to 138%. And when you put that against a 20-year financing structure, and we're assuming 2.5% interest, which is today realistic, it's a great rate. You're really not needing much of that operational savings. You only need a couple $100,000 of that. You've got some bonus cash flow. So that base project is a very strong project, and it accomplishes a tremendous amount. So if we add the windows and all the camera work, it jumps up by about $2.4 million. And again, windows are expensive. But we add a little bit of savings to this, but we're not necessarily saying this is going to change your operations and maintenance savings. That may be arguable, but it takes us to, and I'll clarify this, based on some funds that you've got for security upgrades here and funds that the jail believes they can commit, you've got about $450,000. I think $250,000 of that is the jail's money from commissary. Is that correct? So that would reduce down the principal value based on being able to justify those funds against specific upgrades that are appropriate. So that would take you to an average annual capital required of a little over $88,000 a year. So that is the best we can do. I will say this, though, if we're really being overly conservative on energy savings impacts, that number goes down. And so it doesn't feel like it would be a stretch to end up coming back to you a couple of years from now with significantly better energy savings results than we had promised and discussed and guaranteed. So, and I'll just finish this out. I mean, I'll make this appeal for the complete project. At 40-year-old windows, to renovate them, what some of our window experts really would say is that's just not spending money wisely. It's a Band-Aid. There is no warranty that we can offer you on a renovation scope. On new windows, the frames will have a 20-year warranty on any leaking or failure. The glass will have a 10-year warranty on fogging, leaking. And really to gain the full transformation in terms of the look of the building, we probably need to do the renovation scope, the full replacement. But you know, I think there is some real value to downtown. There's some real value just for the image of the county when people come either to the school district office or whatever function they're coming here for. The analog technology on cameras, just the more I've really come to understand it, just like you can't tell who's really attacked an officer, that's really not good. The security and the productivity is limiting. We do understand it truly adds to your liabilities. So our other thing is, a lot of times people tell us, I wish we'd done all this at one time. And part of that is when we start renovating in a building, people get used to a little inconvenience. If we're going to make dust, it's better to do that once and really maximize the synergies of having project management and whatnot. We do not believe that you're going to buy things cheaper in the future. We just continue to see inflation, above normal inflation on construction materials. That comes and goes, but the other side of it is we think the cost of money today is very reasonable, and maybe it'll keep getting more reasonable, but it's a pretty good deal right now. So, and lastly, this would be our construction schedule, based on really giving us final approval probably in December. We're going to get all of our final engineered drawings moving and done, all the submittals. We don't order anything until you've seen a detailed submittal and you've blessed what we're ordering. So equipment orders that get placed, we'd like to be able to begin work the first part of February, if not some of January. And ultimately, we'd like to maximize the mild months of March, April, May to get the most work done related to HVAC changes where we've got cutover periods. And especially if we did the complete window project, we're going to have some gaping openings at times. We'll do a lot of temporary safety structures. We'll do temporary waterproofing, but we'd much rather use the spring months to accomplish that. But we expect that by July, we're down to punch list items, and by August, we'd be looking at final approval of all the improvements done. So with that, I'll take you to, thank you for giving me that time. There's just a lot that we're recommending here, so we weren't sure if we could really accomplish this without giving you some reasonable detail.
Thank you.
Our pleasure. You folks are a delight to work for. Everybody's been extremely helpful. I didn't give you a chance to hold it.
I got you.
Oh, go ahead.
Hey, Russ, slide 70, it was the breakdown of savings for utilities, 33%.
Yes.
How much, I'd like to know what it is for the 260 and some change, the electric, natural gas, water, and sewer. I'd like to know the breakdown, not just their overall arching number. I'd like to know the breakdown between the electric, natural gas, water, and sewer, when you can. I know you can't tell me right now, but.
Oh, he's got a photographic memory.
I mean, is it
As long as you
50% electric, 20% natural gas, 40% water, sewer?
It's about 34, I believe, electric
Percent?
percent, a little bit more natural gas, I want to say 39, and water is in the 15% range, I believe. I'll double check those numbers, but.
Now, and on the water, that's combining sewer too with it?
And Tracy, by getting rid of the cooling tower up here, you're getting rid of a lot of water and the sewer costs. So, but,
Thank you, appreciate it. That's
did
just
that add up
curious.
to 100%?
Oh. Well, they got a contingency loss of 15% or 13%. They got 7% figured in earlier.
And we do, Jared's been through a lot of, we do a lot of peer review, but our calculations go through a lot of people scrutinizing things. So his calcs have had to stand up. So we've got a ton of detail on any of that we can share with you if you'd like.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, maybe the mayor knows off the top of her head, what is our total debt for the county as we sit today? I mean, I'm trying to look it up here, and
I wanna
Is it
say it's-
118? Well,
I want to say it's 54 million.
yeah, it seemed like it was 50s. So what we're proposing here is 9 or 12 million? Is that right, depending on what plan we go with?
Let me take you to that slide, well, I'll let Jared keeps up with me. So you're gonna have a project cost, if you did everything, of 7.86, and you're gonna reduce that by 450,000 for your financed amount.
No, I'm sorry, I was looking at the total funding available. All right.
Yep, so, 7.4 million.
Thanks. And how does this, Mayor, play into the 5-year capital outlay plan that, or do we have one?
I don't think that we necessarily have a 5-year capital outlay plan. I
Yeah, it
mean, we
shows-
have requests that are submitted, so the deficiency is that we don't have a plan to address their 5-year requests. So this does take, a considerable amount of those requests off the table. One of the things, for instance, right off the top of my head, we have built into the requests the air units at the Jolly Building. And Roger has been trying to replace those a few at a time. And I think maybe 2 years ago, we had some extra funds. You put, when some funds come available, he'll replace them. Or when they fail, then we're in crisis mode and we're forced to replace them at that time. So that addresses that. We're going to get more life out of the roof at the DARC, for instance, with some suggestions they have. So yes, a lot of that's going to get pulled out of your capital requests that are submitted to the budget office.
It looks like there's, I think it's 56 billion is what it's showing as fixed to variable rate debt. For me, it's kind of scary to step off the platform and spend $1 right now, even though we have revenue and this is a good plan. But, we're talking about spending a significant amount of money and making an investment with no finance director. We have an interim. But I need to know, Mr. Chairman, if the interim's going to implement, these other things that show up under the finance department on the website for, the capital improvement plan. Is that going to implement or isn't it implemented? I feel like we're kind of going to make a decision on something that we don't have a finance director being a part of. And I like the idea. We have to improve our buildings. We need to make these changes. But we also have to have the finance department engaged from the finance side. So that's just one of my concerns, and that's where I'll leave it. But I like the idea and the thought of doing the project. I just want to make sure we have the finance department and the budget committee and all them on board too.
Sure. Well, and we do, the Finance Committee did bring this up in general today and authorize Robbie to go out and if commission approves a plan, then for him to go ahead and have some research done for the next finance meeting in terms of how it would be implemented on the finance side. If you look at the two plans they proposed, one actually does have a positive cash flow. So the savings that are created, that's the base project cost. So that would, if you recall that first project the schools did, and I was skeptical of that. No offense, Russ. When I was. I was looking at that in detail and how can this be? Can we really pay for something through savings? And we actually came out better than expected on that particular plan. So when they went through the second phase, knowing all of the capital needs, and if you look at everything other than the cameras, those have been needs. I mean, if
Yes.
you recall, Chief
Absolutely.
Johnson made a play and a plea for those. But how do we pay for it when we have other critical needs in front of that? This is a way to pay for some of those things. We don't have to, but it is a way to do it. And if we did the full project, which would be the windows and the cameras for this building and for the jail, then we would need to come up with the 80-some thousand a year. So,
I don't disagree with doing the complete project. I guess my concern is, in the example you used with schools, the difference in that project was they had a CFO, Mr. Woodward, who overseen the project and was invested and understood the revenue, the cost and such on the school side. You know, you just said that in budget, Robbie was directed to go out and maybe look at some tools, right? It seems to me, in the last finance director we had, that person was more proactive in taking an active role in understanding the finances and making recommendations, whereas the interim we have now, again, no disrespect, Robbie was
Sure.
kind of put in that spot. He's being told what to go do. I'm looking for a finance director who's going to run this county's 1981 fiscal act and manage it and report back to this body and tell us, these are the recommendations that I would make through the finance committee and the budget committee and so forth. So I feel like we're in a dangerous spot, personally, the way I feel it, because it sounds like the budget committee or the finance committee can go say, hey, Robbie, go do this. Okay, I'll go do this. Well, I need someone that's not going to just run and do what everyone says, but rather sit down and study and analyze. For me, Robbie should be sitting down with Russ and going over these things. And again, I'm not blaming Robbie. He's been put in a precarious position, and you know, I don't know when the finance director is going to be selected. And it seems like a lot on this side of the table feel like it's okay to kind of wait a while. And if that's the case, I'm one commissioner who's going to wait a while to spend any money. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Anderson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The 88,000 for what we would need to fund from capital outlay, that we approved half a cent towards capital outlay in the last budget, which is $80-some thousand a year, and I don't think we've earmarked it other than just into the capital fund. So it seems like we're pretty much already
Already budgeted.
We've already got it budgeted. And then there was another thing, and you might have mentioned this the last time you presented, but I think Dr. Parrott's he's renegotiating the minimums with the utility companies now at this point. They've already saved so much that I don't know what the update is.
Yeah, so we're always looking, part of our services are we analyze ongoing the results, but we've dropped enough of their electric use down below contract minimums that they were really being charged for a capability they had no need for. So the Clayton Utility Board's been great to work with the school system. So we've made the recommendation, and then they've followed through and requested them consider those things, and they've been good to do that. So I don't know if I think that opportunity may be the case possibly for these buildings as well. But again, we are pretty encouraged that maybe to your point on the windows, Commissioner Mead, you're kind of spending the money, you're just not getting the improvements, and we'd love to find that really is possible even on the total project if we can do the best work. But
And one thing too, to Commissioner Anderson, to your point, we also in finance have talked about some refunding opportunities that exist at the end of April. And Scott Gibson is going to come and present some plans to us on that. I just asked him, out of curiosity, to run just a preliminary on one of the refundings and what we could look at in annual savings. And his preliminary refunding result was $60K a year on the 2021 to 2029 notes, and then that debt actually goes away. So, you could reassign, either give that money back to the taxpayer, or you could continue that on. And then also, we are currently overfunding debt service. So if you recall, last year Natalie recommended, in order to address some of the capital needs, that fund had built up to basically the equivalent of 10 cents that we were able to transfer into the capital fund and pay for some capital needs. So annually, that is being overfunded, and anywhere between 60 and 80,000. So I have asked Scott to look at that as well. So there are basically 3 different sources there that we could have to use that and take care of those needs. I would like to ask for a motion, if you all would be willing to do a motion on what your recommendation is, so that these gentlemen could, naturally, the process would be presentation of a contract that would go through the purchasing route in December. But I would like a recommendation to move forward and allow them to develop those documents in an official contract, so that Catherine can do her magic, Jay could do his magic, and we could have something, a contract in place in December.
Got a motion by Commissioner Anderson. Do we have a second? Second by Commissioner Mead. Any discussion? Yes. Commissioner Yeager.
Would be the complete project? Do we need to specify that at the moment?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
because we would need,
Agreed.
yes.
Okay.
Otherwise, we're paying for it anyhow, really. We're gonna be in there doing repairs and this stuff that we don't replace. We're gonna be taking care of maintenance on things. We're gonna have things breaking down, we're gonna have to replace anyhow. We're gonna continue in emergency mode if we don't do the full project.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Motion passes.
All right, the next item I have on my agenda is the Memorandum of Understanding. This is an MOU between Anderson County Government and the State of Tennessee regarding the Anderson County Family Justice Center. This is a grant that the District Attorney General has won for this judicial district. And basically, this is if you looked through that MOU, it's not any kind of, it's just a memorandum that will support the Family Justice Center. For instance, if the sheriff is made aware of a domestic violence, that they're going to work, or will refer if somebody calls the mayor's office. Thank you.
Second. A motion, second. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, the next item is the archives, and as you recall, last month I came to you with the structural concerns for the archives, and then also the vault, and Roger is here and can address the plan that he has come up with, which I think is a very workable, the best plan for solving the problem. And so I'd like him to talk about what that plan is and seek your approval, since you all assign space.
Okay, we all know the structural issues that we're having on the 3rd floor and on the 2nd floor. Okay, my intentions is working with Rex, Terry, different ones that kind of deal with records and archives and stuff up here. So on any of it that they're saying that you put a lot of records and stuff in, or any kind of storage, 1st floor level, we all know is kind of the best. I've sat and kind of crunched the numbers up on the space that we have. Me and Rex kind of talked, saying that we could move most of what is in the 2nd floor vault. We can take to DARC in Oak Ridge. We do have an empty space there. Okay, we have an adjoining room beside of it. Okay, take the 2nd floor down to where, Keep America Beautiful is right now, but we can move them, relocate them to another room. And that was kind of like working talking with Russ. at least we've got a starting point. I want to clean the second floor out, take all the records down there. I would like to take the elections office, move what all the election has in the storage on the first floor up to the vault. That solves that issue. Okay, and once again, talking with Rex, there's a lot of records that we can take off of the third floor. And like I said, take the third floor stuff, put it where elections is at, and the office beside of me. Pretty much so eliminates all the issues that we're having as far as the weight on this. And then, back to what Mr. Anderson was discussing, I still have, what's the figures I have, even with the lawyer's offices, whatever the rooms is that everybody's calling them, you'll still have like 1,400 square feet left after we build the little 4 rooms that we've kind of planned on. Okay, then I know Hal Cousins said he would have to have a place for one of his guys to sit or whatever. So still yet, I mean, at that, you still have like 1,300 square feet. And I figured the books, anything that Rex and them would have to have, anything that the court system would still have to have, you've still got roughly 1,000 feet up here on the third floor, which it solves our issues. Election office gains space, and we're still in a operating mode, and it still yet leaves this county an archive section for Anderson County. I know it's kind of complicated. I can show you on a piece of paper, but, you know.
I would certainly like to see something, just a little thing, that the stuff from the third floor is being moved here.
I got it in my office, but I forgot.
And so that, and then get it out to the commission before the meeting so they can consider it.
Yeah, okay.
Commissioner Yeager.
Rex, if you're awake back there, I can't see, but would you need to buy more of those movable shelves for?
That would be up to you all. My recommendation, if you're gonna move files, let's do it in an efficient way where we don't have to do it ever again. If you'll go to Oak Ridge or Juvenile Court and kind of see what we did with those movable files, you almost double your capacity.
Right, yeah, I have seen those.
For the one room.
On the first floor, that's not an issue.
Moving to Oak Ridge, I got an estimate this week, it'd be about $80,000 for moving, for a filing system, but I think it would take care of any records from the criminal and the general sessions here, the Clinton office. I'd say 10, 15 years. I mean, it would solve, a problem as long as we need to worry about it.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are all of the records that were stored at Unit 1 at the jail, have they all been moved out?
Yes, we moved in when we put the movable system in Oak Ridge, we moved all that. Hal Cousins had some records there as well, but we moved everything Oak Ridge.
Okay, so that's all. All right, thank you.
I do know, Roger, and I should have thought of this when you reviewed we should have done a drawing to show you the room assignments. But basically, I know one of the concerns that would come up is the space for the elections and their machines. They actually, with this, come out, is it 100 square feet?
And they're not a big
Ahead.
floor loading.
No.
Yeah.
It's all the weight issue.
Yes. They'll still be in the same building, and then they'll be in a vault, which is
Yeah, secure.
more secure than a room. So, I think they would actually come out ahead. They probably won't like the move, but we'll assist however we can with the move. And then that, okay.
At the request of the mayor, allow Mr. Lloyd to provide a reassignment plan of space to full commission. That's my
Second.
motion.
Got a motion and second. Motion by Commissioner Wandell, second by Commissioner Meade. Any discussion? Only one question I've got is we're moving records from the vault to the DARC building? Is that
Yes,
correct?
and most of those, actually, we've already been working on that. I think over half of those were juvenile records, were they not, Rex? And so they've already, before we even knew of structural issues, they were actually already in the process of doing that. And the vault does have, we had too much weight in there as well. And so it really fixes that problem by putting the machines in there. So the main issue on the third floor is there's just a lot of, if you've been in to to the archives with Miss Harris and walked around with her, you see those very, very heavy books that are, I mean, getting those to the ground floor is critical, and I think we can, that space that the elections office uses there is a good large space, and we can, I've talked to Roger, if we get that assigned, we can make it a nice place for citizens to come in, and it'll also be quick access. They won't have to go to the third floor. Third floor will be for the courts. I think it would be a win for everybody.
And those will be secure, because I know what people's thinking.
Yes.
If you're moving it from a vault to just a building.
Now, this is
could
from
be
a building
security
to a vault.
No, I'm talking about what they're moving from the vault.
Oh, the files, well, those files that have already been moved out of there already are already in his secure area.
Okay,
They're not,
so
we've
they're
not
just
put
as
him in.
secure.
Yes, yes.
But even at that, well, kind of like me and Terry had talked, even if we move, I'm sorry, even if we move down to Oak Ridge, I've got cameras on about all the doors outside, even outside general sessions. Folks, we could add cameras in fairly cheaply, you know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
that way, at least all areas would be secured anyway.
Fire protection, all that's
Yes,
already
sure,
there.
Sure.
Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman, just one thing, if you move the records to Oak Ridge, just remember, okay, that room, it needs some work. There's,
Sure.
I mean, it's got window, lights, it's shelving, there will be an expense, just not really start sticking records in there. I think Roger's gonna put together some type of cost estimate for that.
Although, I think we have, if that's approved, we have that through them, so.
Okay,
We
but
could do
they're,
it- we could do
whenever
it
we move
temporary,
them, they're gonna be
yes.
just as secure and safe as where they
Yes.
were at. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
And then the last item is, last month, we talked about doing a review of all of the fees and litigation taxes that you all have authorized or the county has through the history, whether a private act or a resolution. And Rex and his staff and finance and Robbie and Randy Walters and myself, we've met on this. We have all the resolutions now and all the private acts and all of that has all been collected. And then we're working on, I have a draft, kind of a summary sheet, but we're not there. So I just wanted to let you know it's still a work in progress. I'll come back next month. One of the things that's been kind of interesting in here, and let me hand this sheet out real quickly to you. So what we're talking about doing is helping the finance office, also maybe building this into the budget book. It will have the name of the tax. So for instance, tonight we did the ASAP litigation tax. It'll have source details, where the money goes, any special notes and conditions. So for instance, we have a litigation tax that goes to funding of the jail debt. We need some kind of mechanism that when that debt goes away, then the tax goes away, and there's a flag in the system somehow. And then we're going to match up the codes, so the clerk has their own collection codes, and then those funds will come to us. We're going to match all of that up, and then notate, is this a state statute? What's the governing state statute? What's the county resolution number? Is it a private act? And then ultimately, we also want this to be a report to give to commission. So if you are entertaining other taxes, or an agency wants an increase, or they come for a donation, you'll have data at your fingertips. Well, this is the impact, or this is what is being paid currently on a court case. you know, what will this generate in funding? What's the history? What did that agency or organization get this year? And it gives you the ability to go back and maybe reassess these. Do we have needs somewhere else in the county? So for instance, if something grows and, you know, 30,000, and then all of a sudden, you know, that grows to 70,000, do you still need to allocate 70,000? Do you still need to tax that, or do you need to reassign it somewhere else? And then also, in looking at this, so there are some things that I noticed just right off the bat. So for instance, we've got one litigation tax for $12. We are supposed to be looking at this annually. And so this one is the local litigation tax in effect in General Sessions Court shall be increased by $6 in excess to a total of $12. And then we're supposed to basically do an annual, do we still need this? Are we still within the parameters of the contribution? And it says, when the increase is enacted, it shall be reenacted, repealed, or adjusted annually to ensure it does not exceed the increase. Well, I don't feel that it's in you know, it's gone past that. I don't think we're outside of that, but it is something where we need a flag within our system that, hey, this is one that we need to look at annually. The library, the law library is another example. We continue to fund books. Do we still want to fund books? Do we want to maybe open that up and do Lexis for the lawyers and you know, I don't know, but there are things in here that apparently went away a long time ago. So there's supposed to be a law library committee, but that is only. I mean, this goes back to the terminology of the county judge. And so we've not had a law library committee in a long time because we don't really need one. We're just getting the books. But is it time to maybe look at something else? Can we share the law library with the election office, with other offices that are also buying their own books? Can we make it maybe the county law library instead of just something under the courts that was put together for the courts? So those are things that we're discovering, and you will get copies of all of these once we get everything on a spreadsheet for you. That's just a status, no action.
And that gives us a way to track, like maybe it was for child advocacy or something. We'd had
Yes.
some money been put back, but they never got it. They went to the general
Right.
fund. Do you know if that ever got taken care of?
It's actually, there was some confusion. So CASA had received some contributions, but apparently we cannot locate what they were about. So I think one maybe went back to when the county used to do annual contributions via application by the nonprofits. But then there was one from the U.S. Treasury, and they requested the funds, so it was probably something where maybe via the courts, some money came through, and then the county dispersed that one lump amount. But there is no resolution for CASA authorizing a fee or a tax. There is for community mediation services. Mm-hmm. And so there was probably, because both of them are housed downstairs in the courthouse together, a lot of people, we get in our minds, CASA, community mediation, and that's probably where the confusion came from. But they are getting their money, and their money is being collected according to the resolution.
But this new plan, that,
Right, I think there's some confusion on
Yeah.
what the title was. We had the community mediation one passed for some time.
Yep.
It wasn't the CASA that some folks thought it was.
yeah.
I think we even went, maybe when it was first enacted, it was $1, and then you increased it to $2. So,
Okay.
and that's it.
Anything else from the mayor? Thank you. Jay, you're up.
Shift gears to Bull Run and the closure there. I've been asked several times about our are we going to do anything on the Jackson Law? Does the Jackson Law apply? Well, the Jackson Law will apply if there's a change in classification or if TVA is bringing out-of-county waste into our county. Well, if you recall, we passed a resolution 3 months ago asking several questions. They've never responded to that. A couple of those questions were oriented to find out some of these answers. So my question or the issue tonight I'm coming before you is, do you want to kick in the Jackson Law? That's a public hearing process. I'll send a letter to TVA, TDEC, saying we're going to take in our option for the Jackson Law. Then we'll have to post the property. TVA's they're mandated at that point to answer our questions, the questions that are in the statute as to what kind of material is going to be there, how much. I can print it all out for you. And then we have a public hearing on it. The Jackson Law is alive and well in this county. We had it for years. Then when it was amended, we reestablished it. Attorney General felt like it was best to do that. We did that a couple of years ago. If not, if we pass on this, then there will be no local approval for anything brought into our county by TVA. It's totally up to you. It's exhaustive process. It's not something we can schedule at the next county commission meeting. There's time limits in here. There's 30 days, there's 15 days. Probably the soonest we can do it is February, but I will tell you this, that once their permit is received and they haven't received their permit, we don't have this ability anymore. That's why I would, if we're going to go forward with this public hearing and the whole process of saying grace on the new storage facility down there, then we need to move fast, and I'll need to go ahead and send these letters right after the county commission meeting next week and tell them we intend to invoke our review process. So it's up to this body, but this will be our only shot at it. TVA has rejected TDEC has rejected the TVA permit right now, but there is, to me, it doesn't look like there's a lot of material they're lacking there. So we need to move fast if you so choose to do that. If not, then that's fine. It's your option. It's county commission's option to do this. But again, please remember, this will be our only chance to say grace or object or deny any new storage facility on the Bull Run facility. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Waddell.
Thank you, Chairman. So Jay, I thought I heard you say that, and maybe I didn't, I'm just going to ask.
You're probably right. I'll tell you that right off the bat.
No, the permit has been rejected to this point, meaning the water permit?
Yeah, this lawyer we've been connected with through Catherine with the Sierra Club has said it's on hold right now, but they've sent back some areas they need to readdress, and it doesn't look like it's anything of great magnitude.
Meaning they could fix it to try to bring it back up to pass it. And that's to address the requested move of Worthington Branch on the new property.
That would be part of it.
Yeah.
The other is the new design of the new facility for storage down there.
As far as and I appreciate it, so in your opinion, as our council, do you feel as if the Jackson Law is in effect and TVA could not build that as it stands now?
Well, the whole issue depends on, number one, are they changing classifications there of the waste? And number two, which is the big one, and if they had answered our questions that we sent to them 3 months ago, we may know the answer. Are they bringing anything into that facility that's out-of-county waste? At that point, yes, sir, the answer is yes. The county commission has the ability to regulate it if they're changing classifications or they're bringing in out-of-county waste to our county.
According to the president, he says they're not bringing in any out-of-county waste, but I would even argue that even if they're not bringing in any county waste, even the waste they're producing on site would not be allowed to be placed into this new footprint because it wasn't part of the continuous footprint that was originally established by TVA.
That's the exact argument,
Okay.
sir.
Okay, so even if it's not being shipped in from other locations, they should
That's
not.
right. I think I outlined two, the
Okay,
change in
okay.
classification,
Okay.
and if it's shipped in from out of county.
And as they've been advertising, the term they use a lot is landfill. They went away from ash storage facility to landfill, which to me is the same as the landfill we have in our county. And then, me and you've talked about this in the past, and I know it may not fit the puzzle, but for me, I would also like for us to explore the idea of how does every ton of waste they generate at Bull Run, do we have the ability to charge them the 50-cent tipping fee? And I know that's a stretch, but it's something I would like for us to consider.
I understand.
And keep in the back of our mind as we proceed with TVA. So I'm in favor of a letter at a minimum, Mr. Chairman, to TVA, letting, and if the mayor's okay with this, I think we should let TVA and TDEC know. I know in my response to TDEC, as a citizen in the area, plus as a commissioner, not as the chairman, that I oppose this new landfill based on the Jackson Law. So I think, I'd like to make a motion, we allow the law director with the mayor to produce a letter to TVA, basically acknowledging our intent to use the Jackson Law for this requested landfill request. That's my motion.
That's, I think that's adequate, but I want you to understand, this is time sensitive. This letter needs to be in the mail next week, right after full body of county commission approves.
I would amend that slightly in my second to say that he should have everything prepared and ready to send upon approval by full commission at the meeting.
And
I'm good with that.
I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No.
But we'll be invoking our powers under the Jackson Law
Okay.
to review this process, is the terminology that we'll be
Okay.
using.
I'm good with that.
Anita, do you have that?
Well, he'll be bringing it to the full commission meeting,
Yes,
and
sir.
he'll have a correct version. And Mayor, Mr. Chairman, does the mayor have any concerns with this approach, or any questions, or?
I mean, I just, it's the will of commission to invoke the Jackson Law, so, I'm not, this is an area I'm not studied in, so, I'll do some research.
Thank you.
Well, just one comment. I mean, I was involved in licensing of a lot of things when I worked with the DOE facilities, okay? It's very similar to TVA, the way they do business. There's no reason not to have in their license, they're not allowed to have out-of-county waste there.
Sure.
If they're already saying they're not going to do it.
Oh, well,
And when they say, oh, but we don't need it in the contract, but trust me, we're not going to do it, I'd rather have it in there.
I'm fine
Well,
with that.
that's why we asked for written responses to our questions that we never have got. And those are pretty critical questions.
I don't have a problem with that, Commissioner Mead. My point was, I didn't want it to be subjected to just it coming from another location. My point is, even at the location, they shouldn't be able to place it.
That's just one of the issues.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
That's just one of the issues.
We'll just cover
If we don't-
both of them. That'd be
If we don't move
fine.
ahead in a timely fashion, we will lose our opportunity to have any authority over what they do.
I like what you're describing is what I'm hearing from the residents. That's probably what they believe is happening.
Commissioner Anderson?
I was just gonna ask if maybe if all of commission could get a copy of the Jackson Law before the
Yeah.
next meeting, just to
I was
kinda-
going to get it together for the mayor and some handouts, and how about if I just send it to everyone?
Yeah, that'd be good.
It's a short set of statutes. I think there's only 8 or 9 in that title, or that chapter, that title. I'll send that out, and the CTAST overview of it, and if you have questions, just get back with me.
The most recent one has the CCR ruling in there, coal combustion residuals.
Okay.
Commissioner Yeager?
Thank you. Just so I don't run into a parliamentarian problem, it says, the so-called Jackson Law is an optional general law that may be adopted by a county or municipal legislative body by a 2/3 majority vote. Is that, am I understanding
We've
that?
already done that step.
Have we? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We are Jackson Law County.
Yeah.
Gotcha. All right.
Tracy made sure of that.
And we're also, and Jay, am I correct, doesn't like the city of Clinton and the city of Oak Ridge have to also approve?
If it's a mile outside,
Oh, okay.
within a mile, so
Yeah.
maybe a stretch
It's within a
for
mile of Oak Ridge, it's just
Clinton,
across
but
the
it's,
bridge.
it's not for Oak Ridge.
Well, not for Clinton, but it is for Oak Ridge.
Yeah, if it's within a mile, they have, municipal has say-so over it too.
Okay.
And it's as the crow flies, so.
Just across the river. Is Oak Ridge.
I'd like to, yes. I like his suggestions, I like Jay's suggestions, I like the rest to do that.
Any other questions on this?
All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, opposed, motion passes.
I'll get you that material tomorrow, Mayor.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask one more question, as it relates to TVA. I would like to make a motion that we get all of the TVA Bull Run resolutions that this body's passed in, let's say, the last 3 years. I think it only really is the last 2 years, but we've passed at least 3 resolutions as it relates to TVA Bull Run, with the recommendation to go to natural gas, with the opposition of constructing a bridge and the opposition of the landfill. I think we have several. So my motion is that I'd like to have a copy for all of the full commission of all resolutions that have been addressed and passed by this body, even to the state, on TVA Bull Run. And I'd like to have a copy of those to review. That's my, that's my,
majority of them, I think I did, but,
yes.
I'll give those to Annette, and, she'll get you the approved copy, but, they're on our computer.
That's my motion.
I'll second it just to keep
Got a
moving.
motion, second, any discussion?
You happy with that, Annette?
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you,
Annette,
Mr.
did you get that one?
I did.
Okay. Anything else for Jay?
I wonder if on Monday night when we meet, the presentation by the company was excellent, but the last 6 or 8 pages were a lot of statistical data. I wonder if we could have a copy of that for each 16 commissioners,
Sure, we can.
particularly the statistics there. That's, you know,
Just a copy of your PowerPoint.
thank you.
Anything else? Any new business?
Just one, I know the mayor's been, she's gonna have a meeting, but Mayor, I'm having folks in the district ask about the new signs going up, construction signs, I guess, by TDOT. Is it simple to say right now that those construction signs are gonna be to redo the intersection at Claxon School, or I know maybe you haven't been completely updated by TDOT yet, and I know you're trying to work on a meeting, and my date's conflicted, but
Yes, I don't know. I can definitely reach out first thing in the morning.
Okay.
I know they had a on-site meeting, I guess, for the utilities. I wasn't a part of that meeting. I think that took place back in August. And my understanding is that things were kind of still on hold for easement issues. So I don't know. I'll get that for you and have that to you ASAP.
okay, I appreciate it. They just thought there was something in the works, and I said, I don't know, I haven't heard yet. I know there's something in the future, but I didn't know how quick, so thank you. Yep.
Anything else? We've got some news. I'd asked a question of our interim finance director last week, and I think you might have got it. Our sales tax is up $2.9 million overall from this time last year. This includes all the cities, Clinton, Oak Ridge, et cetera, and the county. As far as the general fund, we're up $63,000 from this time last year. July, August, and September, and the schools are up $309,000 from last year. First quarter, sales tax continues to increase. I attached a copy of the local option sales tax collections. He did a graph, a bar graph, and I don't think everybody got that, but I'm going to ask that he just send that to everybody. It's just general knowledge of the state of the county financially. Any old business? Motion to adjourn. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the presentation.